It's a very clever way of thinking about it. Do you think about that stuff much, or do you just think about the movement? I often don't think about the musculature.
Depends on why I'm programming something. Injury rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Definitely thinking about the musculature. General preparedness. Generally just thinking about the movement. And it depends how deep you want to go as well. Like depending on the phase of training that someone's in. Like I say, it might just be a very general preparatory phase, in which case you're probably just thinking about movement as a whole. And then as you start to get slightly more specific, you might be thinking, okay, we're trying to really up the squat in particular at this point in time. So what musculature helps you squat heavier, break the squat down a little bit more, and then you can target those muscles through accessory movement rather than other movement. And also just with bad movement patterning, like something that I think I would like to discuss with you is you messaged me the other day asking about like knee position and glute firing.
Yep.
And how people can sometimes blame just the glute for poor position rather than maybe having a look at whether if the person has ever squatted with good position in the first place.
Yeah, like which, it's a chicken or the egg scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is more important, the glutes or the position?
Yeah. And
what did you say?
I said position only because, but the problem with saying position is that if someone were to have really weak glutes, they wouldn't be able to get to position necessarily, or they wouldn't be able to maintain position under load. However, I think training at really low load and forcing position at a weight they can handle will then train glute without necessarily having to focus on it, if that makes sense. Like plenty of people that I've seen that can squat huge weight but have serious knee valgus.
Yeah.
And probably because they were never taught good position in the first place. So under light load, as they were coming up and getting heavier, they always had that knee valgus and no one ever took it back and said, hey, we need to make sure your knees are tracking and stacked properly over the tops of your ankles. And then that is now why they've got that issue. Because there's a lot of people that have really strong glutes that still have those issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have that issue. On a really heavy load, my knees will track inwards. It doesn't happen on light weights.
Yet you can good morning almost what you squat.
Yeah, maybe not exactly what I squat, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. So your glutes obviously aren't weak, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, you've obviously got a very strong back. That's why your deadlift and your good morning is so strong, and why you used to squat so back dominant.
Still.
Like so much of a lean forward. But to say that you are able to good morning that much weight by extending your lumbar spine is a bit ridiculous. Like you've obviously got the glute strength to extend the hip as well. So it's odd to think that you are not able to control that knee valgus under load.
Yeah.
In saying that, it's different portions of the glute as well that's doing the work. Like glute max is extending the hip, but then glute min, glute med is more controlling what's happening at the femur.
Yeah. That's pushing your knees out already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, out, not in.
Out, yeah.
I think the reason I messaged you that question was because I just see online so many people doing all these glute accessory work that their coaches, PTs, sometimes physios and whatnot give them. And I don't see a lot of progression or like reasoning behind it. Like I have no problem with someone doing like monster walks or X walks or whatever, glute bridges, clams, everything, as long as there is some sort of remedial use to it. Like it's that, and then we go into the squats and see if we can change the movement pattern. And I think it should always start with the movement pattern first, and then you figure out how to make that movement pattern better by adding on
movements on top.
So like, all right, your knees keep tracking in. Let's try this quickly to prime you before you do the squat. And if that works, then awesome. If it doesn't, we need to figure out a different way of attacking that situation.
Yeah, and that's something that had a bit of an issue with in the past is people who do like your activation work before you start, and say you're doing your activation work for your glutes. The problem is that I've seen a few times is that people get really, really good at turning their glutes on and using their glutes in the movement that their physio or their PT has taken them aside and spent 10 minutes teaching them to use their glutes properly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, and this is exactly what you're saying, automatically translate to them being able to use it in a different movement.
Yes.
In the bigger movement. So just because they can use their glutes to abduct the leg in a side lying position in a clam, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to externally rotate while squatting.
100%.
Because you've spent the time to show them, teach them what it feels like to do the clam, but you haven't spent the time teaching them in the squat.
Yeah. But they might not be able to control it in the squat yet.
No, maybe not. But to say like, yeah, okay, you're awesome at it at the clams, let's get into the squat. Holy shit, why isn't it working?
Yeah, they're missing some
There's some steps in there. Yeah.
I get that. And that's an important thing for a lot of physios that don't have a background in strength training. A lot of them don't have a good exercise progression knowledge. And that's something that as a physio you need to get better at. And that's why Kush had such an advantage. Like, she comes from a strength training background, and that's something that she's finding is a huge strength for her in her field.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some sort of, just like the hollows, a progression and regression. So clams are your regression because you're laying on your side. It's quite easy to do. And you go from that, and then you go to like a level 2 clam where, you know, your feet aren't touching anymore. So you've got a floating leg and it's moving out and in. Then
add a band.
You know, or well, I wouldn't even add a band yet. Maybe we add some hip flexion to it. So now we're kind of mimicking.
Sorry.
Do you want tissue?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Now we're kind of mimicking that squat. Then we go onto our backs, and now we're doing some glute bridges. Then we do some single leg glute bridges where we're again adding that hip flexion in and seeing if we can keep that
knee,
you know, abduction, adduction, you know, at bay. Then we start, you know, progressing to monster push outs or whatever.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a progression to the squat, and that needs to be your end goal, and they need to be able to control at each level.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Supersonic.